This has to do with the babies of slaves, very, very obviously. And I think we're going to win. I don't think they went about discussing it right.
The Supreme Court is finally doing what Donald hired them to do and handing down disappointing decision after disappointing decision today, prompting Trump to put down the McDonald's and Ozempic and get in front of the camera. Now, we've all seen Trump TV. We know he loves his time answering questions so he can practice his famous weave. But really, that's just giving us a chance to see his declining mental acuity, while gloating about the Supreme Court allowing for his attack on birthright citizenship to go through, which we'll touch on that in a second. Trump brings up the Civil War, and of course, as a history buff, he completely gets the dates wrong. Check this out.
Under birthright citizenship, if this is implemented, who would be tasked with actually vetting citizenship? And how, would this be a situation where you have nurses and doctors checking for citizenship of parents, or?
This is all pending litigation. It's going to be decided in October by the Supreme Court, and we'll discuss that after the litigation.
If you have an undocumented baby, would that baby then be an enforcement priority?
The violent criminals in our country are the priority now. Let me put it in perspective. Today marked the 2,711th arrest in our country of TDA members, just TDA. Everyone in this room agrees they are one of the most violent criminal organizations in the world. And the Biden administration let them walk into our country for the last 4 years. 2,711 of them today have been arrested in our country. That is the priority of Donald Trump. That is the priority of this country, of Homeland Security, of all of our lawyers, of FBI. That's the priority. That will be discussed in October when the Supreme Court hopefully rules in our favor, and we're very confident of that. But you should all feel safer now that President Trump can deport all of these gangs, and not one district court judge can think they're an emperor over this administration and his executive powers, and why the people of the United States elected him.
I just might add one thing. And, they used birthright citizenship, some of the worst people, some of the cartels, to get people into our country, just so you know. And again, I say, if you look at the end of the Civil War, the 1800s, it was a very turbulent time. If you take the end day, was it 1869 or whatever? But you take that exact day, that's when the case was filed. And the case ended shortly thereafter. This has to do with the babies of slaves, very, very obviously. And I think we're going to win. I don't think they went about discussing it right. I came along and we looked and we said, wait a minute, this is wrong. We've been looking at birthright citizenship wrong for years, but they've used it. The cartels have used birthright citizenship to get very bad people in. And what Pam's doing and what Todd and everybody else, what they're doing at DOJ and all over, FBI, ICE, Border Patrol, these are incredible people. They're trying to keep our country safe, and they don't want to have people come in. This is just another way that they get illegal immigrants into our country, and in some cases, very, very bad ones.
So, as you know, the Supreme Court did not rule on the underlying constitutionality of the president's birthright citizenship order. So, what is the plan now? Are you going to try to implement the EO just in states where there isn't a legal challenge?
Yes, so birthright citizenship will be decided in October in the next session by the Supreme Court, unless it comes down in the next few minutes. I guess it could come down. I think they're still deliberating right now on some cases. As you heard, we just got transgender books, which is a huge win. But most likely, that will be decided in October in the next session. However, it indirectly impacts us because, as you correctly pointed out, if there's a birthright citizenship case in Oregon, it will only affect the plaintiff in Oregon, not the entire country. So yes, it's indirectly, but that's pending litigation, and we're waiting on that in the next term.
And how concerned are you that the Supreme Court will come back and determine that the executive order is unconstitutional?
We're very confident in the Supreme Court. But again, it's pending litigation, and that will directly be determined in October. But it indirectly impacts every case in this country, and we're thrilled with their decision today. Peter.
Madam Attorney General, thank you for being here to take our questions. A couple questions to the both of you. The EO had a 30-day grace period before it goes into effect. Is there any thought about trying to make it effective immediately within that period of time?
we're going to follow the law. We're going to make those decisions, and we're going to do what's right in the bounds of the law.
And then the DOJ didn't ask the justices to rule on the merits of the birthright citizenship ban. Just for explanation purposes, why?
Sure, because that's going to come down in October in the separate. This was huge because it's indirectly impacted today. As I said, it's case by case. Let me reiterate, of the 35 of the 40 nationwide injunctions filed against this president, against his executive authority as president of the United States, 35 of them came from Maryland, D.C., Massachusetts, California, Washington. I mean, that's crazy. These 5 districts. So yes, it indirectly impacts us. It will be a separate decision in October. Next question.
Thank you, Mr. President. A question for you, sir. Do you believe this ends the power of the lower court judges to stop your agenda? Do you see this as a full green light for your agenda going forward?
Well, you'd have to really speak to the lawyers about that. But this is really also a decision based on common sense. It didn't work the other way. It was a disaster where somebody from a certain location in a very liberal state or a liberal judge or a liberal group of judges could tie up a whole country for years because their decision would sometimes take years to overturn. We've overturned many of the decisions, but it would take years to do it. And we have to act quickly when it comes to illegal immigration. We have murderers, killers, we have drug dealers, we have what they've allowed to come into our country. Should never be forgotten. It should never be forgotten what they've done to our country. And we have to be able to act very quickly, and we're going to do that.
If you ever hear a Republican say that they're only coming after the illegal immigrants and they're not coming for legal migration, you have my full permission to slap them in the face, of course, with facts and logic. Because even the suggestion that we should get rid of birthright citizenship because people are taking advantage of it is completely racist. Sure, the 14th Amendment was ratified in order to give slaves citizenship, but before that, German and Irish immigrants were basically just given citizenship because they were white, and after that, immigrants from all over Southern and Eastern Europe flooded into America during the World Wars, many of which had no citizenship to the United States and only gained citizenship through anchor babies. Those very anchor babies are the baby boomers who have been demonizing immigration for the last 50-60 years since the 4th wave of immigration started into the United States. So let's check out this victory that Trump is gloating about, and what exactly did the Supreme Court rule when it comes to birthright citizenship? Well, the answer is nothing. They didn't actually talk about Trump's assault on the constitutional right. Instead, they used this case as an opportunity to put a muzzle on the federal judges and limit their ability to impose nationwide injunctions. And that is a victory for Donald Trump, but it doesn't actually answer the question of the constitutionality of his executive order, something that the dissenting justices point at in their heated response, as well as a warning about the consequences of this decision. Here's what Amy Coney Barrett, who has decided to go back to the evil side, wrote in the majority opinion. No one disputes that the executive has a duty to follow the law, but the judiciary does not have unbridled authority to enforce this obligation. In fact, sometimes the law prohibits the judiciary from doing so, she wrote, which is just such a lame way to dodge the meat of the issue. You see, instead of actually addressing the issue of Trump's unconstitutional executive order, they instead barred justices from doing nationwide injunctions, essentially saying that nationwide injunctions are not the appropriate avenue to stop the president from breaking the law. Which of course begs the question, well, who else would stop him? Justice Sonia Sotomayor, in a dissent joined by the court's other 2 liberal members, wrote, "The majority ignores entirely whether the president's executive order is constitutional, instead focusing only on the question whether federal courts have the equitable authority to issue universal injunctions. Yet the order's patent unlawfulness reveals the gravity of the majority's error and underscores why equity supports universal injunctions as appropriate remedies in this kind of case." In her dissent, Sotomayor said Trump's executive order is obviously unconstitutional, so rather than defend it on its merits, she wrote, the Justice Department asks this court to hold that, no matter how illegal a law or policy, courts can never simply tell the executive to stop enforcing it against anyone. The gamesmanship in this request is apparent, and the government makes no attempt to hide it, Sotomayor wrote. Yet, shamefully, this court plays along. That is absolutely terrifying. The Supreme Court seems to be assisting Donald Trump now in unraveling our systems of checks and balances. Hakeem Jeffries responded to this decision, pointing out that this doesn't completely close any legal pathways to challenge Trump's unconstitutional actions here. He said, "We will not surrender in the battle to protect birthright citizenship." The official statement says, "The Supreme Court has recklessly limited the ability of federal district courts to issue nationwide injunctions. However, the judicial fight to protect birthright citizenship is alive and well. Every child born in the United States is an American citizen. We will not rest until that constitutional right is completely and unequivocally protected." This means that the Democrats are going to have to switch strategies here. Instead of relying on nationwide injunctions, they're going to have to do a state-by-state assault on this executive order, as the 28 states that don't have pending lawsuits are open to Trump's executive order right now. Definitely not the preferred path, but not all hope is lost. If you guys enjoy this kind of coverage that MAGA hates to see, make sure to join us here at Really American. I'm Tony Hinderman, and I'll see you next time.